first and foremost, we have to talk about maybe the largest cheating scandal in the history of college sports that's non like financial related, right? Non death penalty to SMU for paying players related. Guys, just off the top here, we've heard nothing other than Connor Stallion's name over at Michigan for the past 2 or 3 days. Garrett, kind of makes sense of this. I mean, you're the Michigan defender on this. What exactly are we looking at here in terms of sign stealing, cheating, etc.?
Well, look, I mean, at this point, I think pretty much everyone's seen what's out on Twitter. And, we can talk about laminated play sheets and we can talk about how he was buying tickets and message board posters from Tennessee and all of that, right? And I want to be extremely clear. Obviously, if all this is true and there's no reason to think that it isn't, then this is a really bad look for the University of Michigan. It's a tough scene, and there's not really a whole lot of defending it. And the hard thing for me is when I look at this, I really don't think that they needed to do this. I mean, when you look at it, and this has kind of been my approach to it, is when you try to really just break down what's happened in these games, did they really need it to go and play the majority of the Big Ten? Did they need to know signs to make sure that they could, stroll past Indiana? Probably not, right? That doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. It doesn't seem like they need that. And then, we talk about like the big games, Ohio State, Penn State, teams like that. Maybe you could argue that there were times that sways the advantage, but we don't really know by how much because Michigan dominated those games, right? There were just so many dominant performances that maybe it's close and they barely squeak it out. Maybe they're still the better team, right? Like and I brought this up earlier, which, hand gesture says don't tackle Donovan Edwards because, we don't want to for 75 yards, right? That's probably not a defensive signal that they were throwing out there that they had on a laminated sheet of paper. But, we can't say for sure that they earned it because this is what happened. They cheated. And so who's culpable, who's responsible, who knew what, there's still going to be lots of details obviously coming out. But this is not a good look for Michigan. And quite frankly, I don't see how this helped them because they didn't win a championship the last couple of years, right? For all the scouting you did of Big Ten opponents, couldn't have sent a couple extra guys to Georgia, couldn't have sent a guy to TCU to make sure that you could beat them. Like what was it about those two matchups that they didn't scout enough or whatever? I don't get the point of it. And the problem is that this is a really good football team with a lot of really talented players, but now it's tainted and it's marred, and we can't know what they deserve versus what was maybe, taken because of this, this cheating, right?
Well, and Trey, I'll come to you in a second. I don't want to bury the lead. Assumptions kill the cat. Michigan is being accused and in all likelihood is about to be judged guilty of sign stealing. Something similar to what we've seen from the Houston Astros, the New York Yankees, maybe even the Los Angeles Dodgers a couple of years ago. Connor Stallions, an assistant on the Michigan football team for the past maybe 3 years, has been buying tickets to future opponents' games, going in his own name with his own credit card, going to those games, sitting on the opposing sideline, and then filming with his iPhone the sidelines in order to capture the hand signals coming in from the opposing coaches. They then, in film study, would decipher those and create laminated play sheets where they have staffers on their sideline in a game, if they're playing Indiana, for instance, where when they see hand signals go up from the Indiana coaches, they have a play sheet that essentially is a guide. This hand signal typically meant this. They can then, relay that call into their offense, to their defense, etc. So with all of that, Trey, this is a really weird scandal. It's another item to hit Michigan. It feels like the NCAA has kind of thrown petty charges at Michigan and Jim Harbaugh specifically for the last several years. But this is legitimate, and this is something that has the potential to be rather game breaking, not because other teams aren't necessarily doing it, but because there's no precedent here. And it's something that it's a scale that we've never seen before.
Right. And if you're just wondering what the big deal is about stealing signs, maybe you are a fan of the Houston Astros and you're wondering what's the big deal about stealing signs. Sorry, I got to get my shots in. Great game 7 a couple nights ago. But all that aside, stealing signs in game is part of football from the lowest levels all the way up to the NFL. Like you go to any middle school game on a Tuesday or Thursday night, you go to any high school game on a Friday night, there's somebody trying to figure out the other sideline signals. That's happening at every stadium every Saturday and every Sunday in the NFL as well. It's happening. But the big difference here, like you guys have said, you are not allowed. It is in the bylaws since I think 1994. You're not allowed to go if you are on staff of a football program in the NCAA, you are not allowed to go to a future opponent's games or a possible future opponent's games if you are on staff in that program. So it's a big no-no. It's been, there's a whole history to it. I think Andy Staples did a great job of breaking it down on his show with, I believe it was either Pete Thamel or the Ralph Russo. It was Ralph Russo with the AP. They did a fantastic job breaking down kind of the history of why this is not illegal. So I won't hash that out here, but listen to that if you want the full history. But bottom line is it's fully frowned upon. It's fully against the rules to do that outside of the game in question on Saturday. You're going to watch film and you're going to see if you can pick something up. But there's also a reason the New England Patriots got in trouble for pointing cameras at their opponent's sidelines in the NFL a few years ago. It's not only against the rules, it's just really frowned upon in coaching circles and, the gentlemanly agreements that coaching circle is really founded upon. So Michigan is going to get a lot of heat for this, probably deservedly so. Yep. Is it the worst thing in the world? Of course not. Like they're not, obviously college football coaches have been accused of things that have hurt people much more deeply than stealing their signs. But from a competitive nature standpoint, it is a really big deal. And I think Michigan's going to get more than just a slap on the wrist of this. And on the Jim Harbaugh thing, Michigan is going to say all the right things. Michigan is going to point to Connor Stallions and say this was a one-man operation. They're, of course, going to circle the wagons and say, listen, this was a one-man thing. The rest of the program had nothing to do with it. But, man, a couple years ago, the NCAA really made it clear that when something like this happens in your program, the head coach is responsible. They were tired of having to deal with all the lawsuits. They were tired of having to deal with all the he said, she said about, if a head coach really knew. They said if something like this happens, the head coach is responsible, and that's in the bylaws now. So Jim Harbaugh, I really don't see how he wiggles his way out of this unless some new evidence comes out.
Well, I can tell you how he's going to wiggle his way out of this. He's going to leave Michigan. This is the death nail for Jim Harbaugh at Michigan. Harbaugh is going to get to walk away from this, I think, scot-free. I don't think there are going to be any sort of ramifications in this season. That would seem very unprecedented. I think what it probably is going to happen is there's going to be a more full investigation after the season that will wrap up. Whatever Michigan has happened, it'll happen. And maybe if they win a championship, there's a massive asterisk by it. But Jim Harbaugh is going to walk away from this and go to the NFL and wash his hands clean of the matter. And what he's going to do is he's going to leave Michigan in a pit where who knows what the NCAA does, right? They've been extremely weak in their penalties over the last several years. They've been extremely inconsistent with how they handle punishment. So there's no telling if Michigan will actually be impacted by this on a long-term scale or not, but it's sure not going to affect Jim Harbaugh. He's going to leave the Michigan Wolverines. He's not going to have to pay any sort of penalty from this, I don't think, unless there's a fine. And it's going to be one of the biggest farces in college football. And for me, this completely ruins Jim Harbaugh's legacy to me in college football. Because, listen, we're going to debate for weeks, if not months, of if Jim Harbaugh knew anything about this. There's an independent third-party agency that today released at least an initial finding that said basically we can't link Jim Harbaugh explicitly to knowing anything about this. If you go over to Reddit, there's plenty of footage, plenty of videos of Stallions standing right next to Harbaugh on the sidelines in a game with what appears to be that laminated play sheet. So just because Harbaugh didn't send an email, didn't send a text, didn't pull a Michigan State and, leave all of these paper trails, to me doesn't mean that he knew nothing about it. Trey, like you said, historically, the NCAA has laid down the hammer and said, if you're the head coach, you are going to be culpable. The problem is there's nothing in their power if he just up and leaves for the NFL, like we think he's about to do. It's to me, it's an absolute shame. It's going to be another black mark on college football history. It's going to be a black mark on the Michigan football program. Yeah, like you said, they didn't need to do this, right? This is completely unnecessary to have done. They're certainly not the only program doing the sign stealing. I have no doubt about that. There was a tweet that I saw going viral today that was like a lot of programs are nervously chuckling at this news coming out. That's not the issue. It's that they got caught and how brazen they were. Like I said, Stallions was buying these tickets in his own credit card name, not even trying to hide it. And so to me, the stupidity is just what is so brazen here. Trey, you said this is in the NCAA bylaws. This is certainly illegal. They really did two illegal things. One, having a staffer go to a future opponent's game multiple times, that's explicitly prohibited. And then the videotaping recording of an opposing team and their signals is also illegal. So I'm very curious to see what the NCAA does here. But I think Michigan is going to get left holding whatever bag it is, and Harbaugh is going to ride off into the NFL sunset. And to me, that doesn't sit right.
Well, and just to be clear, like nothing I was saying on the front end was trying to justify any of it. Obviously, this is horrible, but I think the people I feel the worst for right now are just the players that are caught up in this, right? Both sides of the football, right? Both on the Michigan side and on the other side of whoever was playing them is that there's something about that competition that when you're out there, you want to know that you're going up against that guy's best and that there's nothing that's, prohibiting you from just facing the guy at his best and that there's no, cheating or, this jumping in or that jumping in. And, I think the problem for me is now if you're a Michigan guy, if you're a Michigan player and you didn't know, you were just taking directions from the sidelines.
Yeah.
You thought your coaches were putting you in a good position to win. And you were just going out there competing, giving it everything you had. And if you're on the other team, now you're going to say, well, now I was cheated of knowing if I was really like that good or if, maybe I'd held with them or maybe if I'd done this, things could have gone differently. But now nobody can know. And so really in this situation, it's the players that are getting hurt the most because the adults want to find the competitive edge. Harbaugh wants to find a way to boost himself. This staffer wants to find a way to go and make his name and make a bunch of money, whatever it is. It's just the adults ruining things for the kids once again.
Gracious, how about